Hello, everyone. We are here today for Art My Medicine specials, as I'm hosting a very special guest to me, Steve Loft, who will tell you a little bit about himself in a second. But in this show, we do talk about all things creative, about connection, about finding your tribe. And Steve is the person who really started that journey for me. And that is why he's very special to me, because he made me come out and speak about my story, and thanks to it I connected to many wonderful people, and for that I'm very grateful to you, Steve. And hello, welcome on my show, and please do tell people a little bit about you.
Yeah, hi everyone, and thank you so much for inviting me on, Dorota. I mean, you're very special to me too. I'll say that now. We've got a great friendship and partnership in a way with what we do. Yeah, it's a real privilege to be here today and seeing what the mental health warriors are doing. It totally aligns with my values. So I'm Steve. I live in Kent, in Chatham. I'm 59 years old. And I've got a son and a wife with me in Chatham here. I'm sort of semi-retired, I think is a description, in that I do still do some training and consultancy around mental health. But my background, if we're going back to when I was 18, I started as an accountant, as a training accountant for the NHS, believe it or not. And I had a 30-odd year career as an accountant, and then I moved on to become a quality manager. And I've mainly worked in the public sector for most of my life. And that was probably because I've always had a commitment to all social. I've always wanted to feel as though I was doing something that had an end result, a benefit. So I've worked in the NHS, I worked in the education field. So I did a lot of support for financing of schools. Then I went on to economic development in Kent, and we're going to talk about art, I'm sure, later on. But one of my sort of prides is that I was involved in one of the first initial talks about the Turner Contemporary in Margate. So, I started helping to get funding with Europe to get that happening. And it's every time I go to Margate, it's pretty amazing to see that and think that I had some sort of small, probably 2 bricks towards the whole thing. But when you see an end result, it's amazing. I worked in Kent for that time, and then one day, then I moved on to the police service, and I enjoyed my time there. It's quite a different culture to what I was used to with education and schools and the NHS. And I got involved in a project to look at camera recognition for the ANPR, so the number plates that cars have. And now they're everywhere, these sort of cameras that track people mainly for speeding and things like that. But in those days, this was a time when people were getting alcohol and tobacco in Dover and bringing it back over and saving money on VAT and that sort of stuff. And that was going on to such a scale that it became a criminal activity for some. So we got involved in looking at how we could identify cars to-ing and fro-ing and that sort of thing. Now, why I tell you that is because, I got to learn a lot about cameras and negotiating contracts and things like that. And then one day I got a call from TfL, Transport for London, who asked me whether I would be interested in getting involved in the congestion charging that was getting there. So for the first time, in what that was 15, 20 years of living in Kent and working in Kent, I moved into London and I started commuting. And I really enjoyed my time there to start with, because TfL, Transport for London, was a new organisation at the time. So there was a lot of money given to us to do some exciting things, including congestion charging. However, as time went on, it got more and more pressurized, the work, and I moved over to quality management for the IT department. And 2012 was when the Olympics were held in London. And although that was an amazing time, it was a very pressurized time. And for me, it got so much that I, 2012, in the early months of 2012, I literally had what's called a breakdown. I hit a brick wall, as I call it. And probably in hindsight, there was a lot of signs there that I was having problems mentally. Things like being snappy, not being able to concentrate, lack of sleep, which is not always good when you're, commuting 2.5, 3 hours a day. One day I just woke up and I couldn't move. I literally physically couldn't move. And my wife knew that there was something wrong immediately and got me to the GP. And he basically signed me off for a month and said, you need complete rest. He said it, and I think he put on the form that it was stress related. And it was. I mean, my body had sort of been overtaken with cortisol and everything like that, all the sort of chemicals that are not good for you. And that it eventually told me that I couldn't move on anymore. And after a month, I came back to work for one day, and it was just catastrophic. The day, I always remember it. I sort of come into the office and my security pass had expired, not for anyone's fault. I'd just been off and it just coincidentally expired. So when you've been off work for a month with a mental illness and only my manager had sort of phoned to check how I was doing, you come to an office. It takes a lot of courage to come back after a month because, with the stigma attached to mental health, there was a lot of shame. And remember, this was 2012. This was a time when no one was really talking. There were people talking about mental health, but they weren't talking at it to the level that we are now, like we're doing this thing today. It was very much swept under the carpet, very much stigmatized, more stigmatized than it is all now. So it was a big effort to get in the office and then find that I couldn't get through the security barrier. That was one thing. And the receptionist who I knew was very kind and got me in. And then I got back to work. I always remember if you can imagine an IT department, I describe it like a battery hen farm, but with just computers. So it's this one big room with just rows and rows of desks. And just happened, my desk was right in the back corner. It was always there. So I had to walk through the office and no one sort of said anything, because in those days, if you had a mental illness or people didn't know why you was off, they didn't ask. So, I had no one that showed any sort of empathy or kindness, because they didn't know what my boss didn't tell anyone what was wrong with me. So I went to the corner of the office. I switched on, and lo and behold, I've been off a month, so I forgot the password. So the first thing I'm doing is phoning up the IT department and asking for them to reset my password. So I reset my password. I flick on the button and then go to my email, which is normally the first thing you do when you're back at work. And I had about 2,000 messages, just fly up on the screen. And I just remember looking at the first 5, and there was one of them saying, "Steve, there's this deadline that you've not met. We need it by tomorrow." And I just basically collapsed at the desk and started crying. And the first thing I could think of was I've got a very good friend who worked at TfL, who was a union rep actually, and but she was a friend as well. And I phoned her up, and she, bless her, she was in an office probably about half an hour away, on the tube to get to, because I was in Greenwich and she was in central London. And she came over immediately because she knew I was in distress and told me, "Look, go down to the canteen, just sit there and wait for me." And she basically straight away said to me, "Look, you've got to get home." And she came home in a taxi with me. That was an amazing bit of care, which in those days, people didn't know how to deal with that. And I'm sure nowadays in organisations, they're a lot more understanding about these situations. And I didn't come back to work for another 7 months. I was off 8 months in total. I had a good line manager. He kept checking in with me to see how I was and kept me up to date with things, but I wasn't really getting much that better. I was going to the GP, and he diagnosed depression. So I was getting various medications. I must have tried 3 or 4 different types with different strengths of it, and I wasn't getting that far. I was sort of just living, surviving, but I wasn't really enjoying life at that time. And I grew a beard. One of the things I regret is not taking a photograph of what I was like then, because you could see the before and after type thing. Anyway, after 6 months, I got called to a meeting, which happens in organisations where you have this 6 month off, and then they review it. And the HR lady there, I knew very well because she worked with me on other, I'd helped her with some cases and training and things like that. So I knew her really well. And I remember going into the office and she said to me, "Look, Steve, what I'm going to say in there, it's not me. This is the organisation." And I thought, well, what's she talking about? Anyway, she basically they came in and said, "Look, this is 6 months. You're not getting any better. You're not moving forward, and we think we might be having to let you leave on ill health grounds." And that really devastated me because if you look at my work history, I'd done perfectly well. I'd got good appraisals. I was a high performer in the organisation. And then all of a sudden, because I've got a mental illness and, I've been off for 6 months, they're willing to let me go. However, when he came out, my boss said to me, "Look, Steve, I want to stick by you. I know that this is not you. I've seen you, and this is the first time I've seen you face to face in a while, and you're ill, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "If I'd broken my leg or something like that, you would have given me a little bit more time, wouldn't you?" Anyway, he was a great boss, and he did some sort of looking into things, and it transpired, and I didn't know. And again, this is nowadays, I think organisations are a lot cuter to it, but I was covered with some private health insurance. I was paying into it, but I knew that I had private health insurance, but I thought it was just for like physical problems, like operations or that sort of thing. But there was actually a psychological aspect to it that you could get cover for. And like within a week, he and I had sort of got me into a very good psychiatrist locally, Dr. Lockhart, and it changed my life. That I had a meeting with him where I just sat with him and told him my whole life story, and he asked me really weird questions, which now I sort of understand, but at the time I didn't. Like, did I grind my teeth when I was young? Did I have a comfort blanket? Did I go to parties, sleepovers? Really weird questions. And then at the end of it, and also about my work and, that sort of thing. And at the end of it, he diagnosed me with generalized anxiety disorder. And he said, "You are depressed because depression, you get episodes of that with the anxiety. You're fueled up. Your body's so fueled up with anxious thoughts and anxious chemicals that the depression comes with it at the end." And basically, he changed my medication. And he gave me an sort of an anxiety calming medication, and the antidepressants, but a different type. And straight away, within a month, I'd changed completely. I had energy for the first time. I was enjoying things. I was going out to the cinema. I mean, one of the things that I didn't do while I was off sick, I didn't want to go out because I was always thinking someone was going to spot me. And nowadays, you're encouraged to do things to get your strength back. But again, it was 2012, and we were in the dark ages in terms of workplace support. But I was lucky I had a supportive manager. So I'd always say that a manager is really, really important, and if you can get a supportive one, that's amazing. And he helped me back to work, and I always remember him. Ian, he's a special person to me. He got me back, and honestly, I came back, and I've got a photograph of me because where I worked was Greenwich, and I've got a photograph of me standing on top of a building with the O2 behind me, and it was probably the best I've felt for such a long time in my life. And after that, I sort of changed roles because some of my problem was to do with a change in role, so it wasn't just about the pressure of work, it was changing the work as well. There was a lot of stuff going on in my life as well, and all those factors contributed to it. But gradually I sort of reconstructed it and got into a role that I really enjoyed. And one of the things that I just had a discussion one day with someone, and we said, "Look, what can we do?" I didn't want people to go through what I went through, you know, in that situation. And I was lucky because I was quite well known in the organisation. I had contacts that I could say to people, look, could I do this? You know, I wanted to set something up. And I went to, there was a disability group, and there was a guy there called Giles, who was the chair of the disability group. And we started talking about mental health as part of the disability. Under the Equality Act, mental health comes under disability. And he said that, you know, I'm looking for someone. It's just like synchronicity. He said, I'm looking for someone who's experienced mental health issues and want to get involved in our group. And I just put my hand up, you know, I was just, and there was a guy there, I think also, who'd got an award for, he'd come back, he'd had a massive breakdown. He went through an organisation called Remploy, came back to TfL and was doing amazing things, and he won an award. And that was what sparked this question. Anyway, me and the guy that won the award, we got together, we met over coffee, we spoke to Giles, and we said, look, let's go to Occupational Health at work and see whether we can get something in place to support people. And Occupational Health are fairly good, but they're under a lot of pressure. And at TfL, the Occupational Health team tend to focus on people who've had traumatic events, like, you know, people going under trains or getting abused or physically assaulted in stations and buses. So they didn't have a lot of time for, at that time, their resources wasn't spread to helping people with emotional difficulties in the office, for example. So we said to them, what can we do? And they said, well, there's been some research, and they say peer support is the way forward. So that's what we did. So two of us set up, we got a room. I managed to pull some strings, and we got a room from 4 till 6 that was available without going through security barriers. Anyone could go in. We set up a safe environment. It was like chairs in a circle, and everyone was given time to share. And we started off with 4 of us. And, you know, in the end, there was 20 people turning up to these groups every month. In so much so that I think now they do them fortnightly and that. But at the time, it started that way. And I saw in that the power of connecting with people that have been through similar experiences and how peer support really does help. And I got that going in TfL and for a couple of years. And then one day, an organisation called Time to Change heard what was going on and came and see me and said, well, look, what are you doing? We want to know a bit more. We've got a workplace team and they're interested in what you're doing. So I got invited to do some talks and share things like I'm sharing with you today. And all of a sudden they wanted me to do more talks to other organisations to encourage these peer support groups to get started, and how we structured it, and how, you know, how regular do we do, and what are their guidelines and policies and that sort of thing. And, you know, we were groundbreaking at that time. There's a lot of organisations have got this now, but at that time it was very, very new. And so we were learning as we were going along too, but that was the excitement of it. But to get invited to, you know, a charity and, you know, to talk about it was really empowering. So much.
I bet. And, you know, this what you said already shows the amazing, you know, kind of blossom after the winter. You know what I mean? It's like that. Yeah, you've been in the dark place. You experience a lot of, you know, emotional distress.
Yes.
But the factor of having someone who understood and someone who reached out to you was the gelling factor for you to grow between those cracks and set up something amazing. And like you said, peer groups, you know, this is so important to find people, like-minded people who understand, who you don't need to explain what you're going through because they have similar experiences. And that is why those peer groups are so successful. Because you don't have any barriers there. You can be yourself. You can take the mask off that we put on when we go to workplaces. And in terms of those workplaces, because yes, I can imagine that back then it was a starting point, and you started something great. Nowadays, many places are much better, have support and whatsoever. But believe me or not, there are still places that absolutely suck at, you know, supporting people with mental health. So the kind of project you were running then, is it still functioning, and is the is there a possibility that workplaces could reach out and learn something from it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a network of people now that work still in TFL and work with other organisations. I think because TFL comes under like railway, so there's a railway mental health charter that I know. There's a guy in Lee in Southeastern, which is the local railway line for me. He's down in Margate, ironically, where the Turner Gallery is, and I went to see him, and he set up a charter which encourages these sorts of groups across all the railway industry. So, you know, from it wasn't from what we were doing, but he was doing something similar, but we shared ideas. And this is the thing, it's an amazing community once you know who's doing what. And it's amazing that a lot of the hard work is done at such a low level in, you know, what I'd call junior level of the organisation. But these people are really committed to it. And one of the other things that I wanted to do, because the union was really good to me as well. And again, you know, that there's various experiences of unions, but my union, TSSA, was amazing, and they were one of the first to sign the Time to Change pledge and this charter pledge. And I work with them still and help them when I can in advising. But the peer support group, you know, they helped, you know, always were plugging it and pushing it people towards us. I mean, going back to what you said about people being themselves, I knew that group was working when there was a guy that came to us in our group and he said that I just love coming to this group every month because you get it. You know, you really understand what I'm going through. And that was, to me, you know, that put a little tingle down my spine because I knew that then it was working when people are saying that sort of thing. The other thing was that we were doing that on our own little back, and then people were starting, word of mouth was going round, and then all of a sudden we were getting senior managers being interested, and now they've got like, you know, sort of very high level managers that sponsor the group and support it, you know, and encourage people to use it or use the resources. So like things like the intranet there, you know, the internal organisational resources. We had a page for mental health resources and all that sort of thing. Now, the creativity side come from the fact that we were trying to create ideas to activities to encourage people to open up. So we did stalls. We had a guy who did origami. You know, one day, this is a great little anecdote. One day I was in the kitchen of where I worked, and this guy was fiddling with a bit of paper. And I said to him, "What are you doing there?" He said, "Oh, I do origami." And I got chatting to him, and he's an origami master, which I think there's only like 5 in Britain. And I had one that was working like 2 desks away from me. So when we did a mental health awareness, you know, the Time to Talk day, I got him to do an origami class. So he got 20 people mindfully making, what we did in the end was make a container, a paper container that you could put water in and drink out of, made of paper.
How is that possible?
Yeah, you can. I've got one. I've probably got it somewhere. I've got it somewhere here, but I'll show you. But yeah, and he told us the story. So he was really good because he did like children's parties and things like that. And he told a story about one day he was on the tube train and a little boy was eating Skittles, you know, the sweets, and he pulled the bag and they all sort of flew out. And the mum was trying to keep it together, and he had because he's an origami master, he's always got a bit of paper in his pocket. He pulled out, made one of these containers, and then put all the Skittles in so the little boy could eat out the Skittles. And it was, you know, that's what creativity is. And, you know, we were looking out for creative people to do, you know, we had your sort of yoga classes and mindfulness. You can do that, but you want to do something a little bit different. And we did. And the group was growing. I mean, I've left there now, but I know that it was in good state when we left it. It won an award from the Mind Marshall Award in 2018 for Peer Support Group of the Year in a workplace. And very committed people. And the other thing is that the people that were involved, you saw them grow. You know, they were, you know, like me, they were probably at the lowest point in their life coming to some of the groups. And to be involved in something where it was safe, where it was with other people who had gone through what they'd gone through and could empathise or understand. And also it was gentle. So we wouldn't force anyone to do anything they didn't want to do. They did it because they enjoyed it. And, you know, I 1 or 2 people there that, you know, just they would do stalls, leaflet drops. I remember Time to Talk Day, 1 year, they gave out tea bags. And literally I had 5 people that went across the whole of the organisation giving a tea bag with Time to Talk Day on it, putting it on everyone's desk. Now, there's 24,000 employees, and not all of them are at desks, but I can imagine there was probably 10 to 15,000 tea bags that were dropped on people's desks. And that's the sort of commitment, you know, they did it after work, you know, or they did it in the morning. That's the sort of commitment we had to the movement. And
it's amazing. And this is another example of a little act of kindness, isn't it? We get it. We who have ill mental health, we understand that you may not know how to approach us, how to talk to us about what was happening when you were off for 7 months or 8 months. We do understand it, but sometimes just that little, you know, act of kindness makes the difference, and makes, because, you know, I remember myself, I was off work once for 4 months after a suicidal attempt, and then soon after for another 6 months. And like you know, I used to work in this open space office, which I hate, and which in theory is supposed to be, you know, this kind of social factor there, right? Because we are all in one room, we can talk to each other, which is absolute illusion because you feel so little in that crowd. And then, and it's like everybody is suddenly very busy when you enter the room after those 8 months, because nobody has a clue what to say, right? And they, of course, ask that question or the phrase that I hate in English, how are you? And what should I answer to it after 8 months of struggling and still struggling? But at some point you need to return to work, right? This is the matrix we are living. We need to make living, right? And I am always puzzled, but there are those little ways people can show understanding without saying any words, really, like your team did with the Time to Talk Day, which is brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, I must admit, Dorota, one of the things I did as soon as I got back, I said to my boss, if I'm coming back, I want to come back on the day we have our team meeting, and I want to go through and tell my story to that team. So there was 20 or 30 people in our team, and I stood up, and it took, you know, I honestly, it was one of the most hardest things I'd done to tell people this is what I'd gone through. But at the end of it, amazing, because I'd done that, the number of people that came to me and said, you know, thanks for that, Steve. We didn't know. It was kept quiet because, you know, my boss said he didn't know what to do. You know, he had no clue. There was no training on how to manage someone back to work from a long-term illness. And, you know, he did the best he could. But I think he just had a glimmer of, I think he'd had experience of someone in his family, but he wasn't sharing that. But I had a feeling he knew a lot more about looking after people than he was letting on. But doing that talk, everyone then all of a sudden they were quite comfortable chatting to me, because I said to them, look, ask me anything. I can always say no, you know, but don't just give me silence, because that's no good to me.
Exactly, it's so cruel, isn't it? Yeah, you may not engage in conversation about the ill mental health, but, you know, let's be human. You know, at the end of the day, if I have an illness or not, I am a human. I am Dorota, and I deserve the treatment everybody else deserves, right? Yes. And I think it was such an act of bravery from you to request that approach, and bravery from the management that they allowed it. Because, you know why I'm saying that? Because I remember when I returned to work, I wrote an article for our newsletter, explaining a little bit about what has happened to me, and I wasn't allowed to publish it in the newsletter. It was said absolutely no. You know, I wasn't allowed to have a voice. Therefore, many people didn't know what happened to me. And that is why there is also mistreatment, not intentional very often. Because if somebody doesn't know what happened to you, how they are not mind readers. They don't know how to approach, right? And this generates stigma after, you know, the hostility, because, you know, they don't understand why, like myself, can snap at stupid question of how are you, you know. I sometimes tell people, do not ask me how I am. just ignore me even in the corridor, because this is sometimes better than lying to you that I'm fine.
I mean, the other, yeah, and the other, that's really true. And you know, you need that support to have the confidence to do what I did, and I just felt comfortable doing it. And I'll be honest with you, Dorota, I hated doing public speaking, you know, presentations, but that day changed everything. It was a game changer for me, because if I can talk about myself, then I was free to do that. And I got asked to do talks similar, you know, about my experience when TFL was mature about, you know, mental health. I ended up being like Ruby, you know, they joked, I was a Ruby Wax of TFL, because, you know, they'd always have me reel me out for doing the talks. And after a while, I got to a stage where I didn't want to do it anymore, because I felt as though I sounded, it's like a record on repeat, you know, and I wasn't enjoying it. So I sort of started to take a back step, and I got a lot more enjoyment, and I still do, out of seeing others thriving and, you know, encouraging them, but, you know, only when they felt like it. And in the end, we had 2 or 3 people that were comfortable once they'd seen me, and I coached them in how to share their story and do it safely. That I had 2 or 3 people that I could bring along, and, you know, a few of them got videos, and, you know, we had podcasts with the, you know, what we're doing now, that sort of thing. So, you know, I'm really proud of what happened there. And the fact was that they were learning organisations, so they realised that they weren't getting it right, but they listened, and they changed some of the policies around because of what we did and spoke about and shared. So I've got, you know, I left TFL in 2017, but I left on good terms. And I, you know, after 2 years, you could go back and do work for them, and they called me back to do talks, and I've done talks for them and the union. But, you know, once sort of moving on the story, so Time to Change asked me to come and do talks. And then when I got, I took severance from TFL in 2017, and I just didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew it was going to be something around mental health. So I did evening classes to study to be a counsellor. But TFL came to me, Time to Change come to me and said, look, we got a workplace training team, and we've only got one lady, and she's a single parent that can only get to Birmingham. And we think that you know, we've seen you do your public speaking. Do you fancy doing training if we showed you how to do it? I said, yeah. I mean, I'd done training as a manager, you know, when I was doing accountancy, but I'd never trained on mental health and that. So, but I had done the counselling course. So as soon as I left TFL, for a year and a half, for only expenses only, I did training and trained to do workplace training. And that everywhere I went, it was amazing, because, you know, I was sharing what I did at TFL, and there was places like the Co-op. I'm trying to think of other companies, Wigan Council, Rotherham. I went to Sheffield, all sorts of over the north of England mainly, and seeing these sort of communities grow in organisations. And I think listening to what I'd done, you know, I did the training on explaining how to set up groups and that, but then you can use your own experience. You know, they can see that it's possible. And, you know, Time to Change Workplace, they had hundreds and hundreds of organisations signing a pledge that said we're going to do things the right way. And that continued until obviously we ended in March last year. So I've been involved with Time to Change since 2013, but I was working for them in 2018, 2019. And then obviously I moved over to the community stuff because I'd left work. So I couldn't do workplace because I was self-employed. So I didn't know what was going on anymore. And I felt as though it would be a bit hypocritical to start talking about workplace when I'm not in one. So I moved over to the community side. And that was just, that was done by accident, because I was asked to do a Time to Change podcast in London, in Compton Street, and Wardour Street, and they got a studio there, and we did this talk, and they asked me to come along and tell my story with a group of other people. And there was a lady there called Christala, who was the London community rep, and she said to me, you know, I'm trying to get more men involved in the community side. And it's funny because 2 days earlier I'd been in sort of a record shop place, a vinyl cafe, I got chatting to the guy who run it, and he said, "Oh, I don't know." He said, "Sometimes I don't think I'm a records. I don't sell records. I just listen to people's problems." He said, "Men, you know, they flick through the records and tell the stories of their life. You know, this record they got divorced, or you know, that's when they met their first girlfriend or friends and all that sort of stuff, or had the first baby." And he said, "I sit there listening," and he said, "They don't buy anything. They just talk to me." He said, "I might as well be a therapist." You know, he was moaning about it. So Christala said to me at this podcast meeting, she said, "I want to try and get more men involved in London." And I said, "Well, look, why don't you, you know, get a group together to talk about music? Because I know sort of it's a passion of mine." And that's where I got involved with the community. We set up this, it was men music and mental health at one stage. It's now me music and mental health. And this group's been running since probably 2018, 19. And yeah, we meet every month, but we used to meet in this vinyl cafe where this guy said, and he was happy because he was getting people buying his records and drinking coffee and that sort of stuff. And we built up a really good group. And one of the members, Neil, in the end, he actually recorded a song and a video, and that's available free, and it's called Talk It Out, and it was all about mental health and
Oh
men.
yes, and it's amazing song, isn't it? I will put a link under our YouTube video because that song also caught my heart, and I created a special artwork for it. And yeah, it's something that everybody must listen to because it's such a lovely song.
Yeah. And you met, I mean, you mentioned about us meeting, and you know, I met a number of like Neil and a few other people in that group, and it builds connections for life because we've been through similar challenges, and you know, they wanted to, you know, everyone's in it for the sake of the group, not for themselves. So yeah, I got involved in that group, and then obviously the community team started needing me to do. I helped with training, and I really loved Time to Change. It was a passion of mine, and that's where I come across you. I saw you during lockdown. It was Perspective Arts, I think, and it's just something about your artwork and your story that really resonated with me, and we just messaged each other, didn't we? And from there it's grown, and I think we both understand the power of connection, which is, I'm going to do a talk next week on that. And you know, this is everything that's energized me is through the connecting with others. I get the energy from other people, and I hope the energy from me goes to them where they can do things that they feel perhaps isn't possible. But if they know there's someone alongside them that supports them and believes in them. And, you know, with Neil, with the song, that was just a chat. He recorded it in a demo and we all listened to it and gave him ideas, said put a choir in, and he got a choir, and it just built from there. And then a video, because John Salmon, who's a great bloke, and he was part of the group. It all sort of pulled together. And obviously the one big thing I want to do, and hopefully this year it'll happen, we're talking about doing a gig, and you know, you doing the posters. We've still got those, and they're not dead dreams. They're still available. You know, their dreams are there to be followed, and that's what we want to do.
Yeah, and it's amazing. It's exactly what you say, that you know, it's a bit like growing a tree. You know, you shoot the initial plant, and then you grow it, and then from one idea, another idea, and meeting another person and linking those people. And it's exactly from the moment we made so many powerful connections, and we delivered so many powerful projects. And we were the power, the fuel. When we heard about Time to Change ending, we both said, there is no way. There is no way we allow it to happen. So we established something that is still a baby, and it needs some, pampering to grow properly. But it's a powerful group of people who used to be involved in Time to Change very actively, and now, although Time to Change is dissolved as a national campaign, those champions are now coming together to keep going, keep fighting to break stigma, keep raising awareness. So would you tell us about that group?
Yeah, so obviously Time to Change finished. It was the government stopped funding it at the end of March last year, and people like yourself and a few others said to me, Steve, we can't let this end. London's a big place, and although there's like hubs in London, like for example Waltham Forest and Greenwich, and Kingston have got very strong hubs that had money funded to them. There are a lot of champions that don't live in those areas. I mean, you and I don't live in those areas, and I wanted something that made them feel still part of something. You know, remember I said the power of connection, and even if it's, you know, we were all disconnected through the lockdowns and the pandemic. However, you know, fortunately, and, you know, I can be critical of technology sometimes because I think it does have some effects on people's mental health, but there are some massive positives, and that was being able to keep connected even though we weren't in person. And those people said to me, look, can we get together and start? We did some groups, and, you know, we developed what we feel is a model for moving forward. It's not moved quickly, but people have got other things in their lives, and I respect that. But it's a small tree that's growing, and I like that analogy. You know, we talk about analogies, and that tree's a really one. It is a tree. It's just pushing through the ground, and we've agreed to call it Talk to Change London. So Talk to Change London is, if you like, a London community, which is a legacy of time to change. So the idea is challenging the stigma and discrimination around mental ill health through things like talks like these, activities, and people getting together. I mean, I still feel that what I did at TfL with a group is a blueprint for doing, you know, we can still do that. We got a mailing list of about 85 people. And I've had 12 people that have stepped forward and said they want to give their time and commitment. And all 12 of them I know are brilliant people in their own way. So those 12 people will get together and develop what I think is a, you know, a powerful movement moving forward across London. And, you know, you and I have already talked about events that we can start to think about happening. And we want to do it under this time to Talk to Change umbrella, because we feel that people like having an identity, like being part of something and connection. And I'm feeling a little bit lost because I'm not sure where I'm connected at the moment. But this is the thing that I feel most connected to. And the people that are with me on it are the people that are connected. But that's not to stop others coming in. And what we want to do is at 85, we know we're successful when that starts growing to the hundreds again. Because Time to Change in London had about 1,500 people, you know, on their mailing list. So where have all these people gone? Now, I appreciate there's other organisations that are meeting their needs, but I bet there's a lot of people that want to be part of something and are not heard about it. So definitely. I think our work in the next year is going to be getting people to know us again, start doing activities live, which is where I get the most joy. We're doing one on next Friday, which you're organising. I'm really looking forward to that. So yeah, I'm really positive about setting up a group that gets people together in London. And on the creative side, we can link loads and loads of activities to that, I'm sure.
Yeah, we somehow evolved to have this art agent as a gelling agent in this group, because we have a pool of people who have different talents, amazing talents. And when you put this into one pot, amazing things happen. And this is how the next Friday event came about, isn't it? It's called Wired, the Power of Analogy. And we will be talking about mental health through analogies. Because arts is in particular, you know, kind of analogy, isn't it, itself? Because you create an image, you create a movie, you act something on the stage that portrays certain aspects of life. So in itself, it's a type of analogy. So at that event, Talk to Change, a London network, will have their very first appearance. And anybody who would like to join. And this, what is the beauty about networks like that, I think personally at least, that you can be involved at whatever level your health allows you or you want to be involved. So there is no kind of pressure, and we are very good understanding that, you know, at some point somebody needs to step and take over because you may have some life happening to you or your illness relapse that you need to take time off. So that is why those networks are so important, because they are really looking after every person and every unique individual there. And this is about, you know, building a tribe. We often relate to that term, that all the people that are in the group, they feel the belonging. And when the mental health is involved, the belonging is a huge factor. And you mentioned it yourself, that you need to feel the connection, you need to feel the belonging for the project, for the work to happen. And that is it, isn't it?
And I think also having the comfort and safety to show your vulnerability, you know, in those groups. So where people can't do things, if they're being honest about that's great. I mean, I mentioned that there's 12 people committed, and one of the things we've all said is what we want to do is pair up so that people have a joint responsibility for an area, so that if one does feel unwell, the other one can cover, and vice versa. And I think that's going to be quite powerful, because, you know, the nature of the group is that people are still got life challenges and, you know, emotional challenges. And so we've got to understand that it's not like a big business where you've got all these high top ranking people and lots of money to throw at it. It's purely voluntary, and having that support and people doing it because they enjoy it. That's what I'm emphasizing all the time to people. You know, only do what you enjoy in this. You know, if you don't like doing the admin-y stuff, then don't do it. You know, I'm good at doing that, sort of getting people together and doing meeting notes and that, but that's not for everyone. Similarly, you know, some people like running events, and that's their bag. And, you know, I'd be there to support, but I'm not necessarily, that's not what I'm skilled at. But I want to do what I'm enjoying. And enjoying is going along and seeing people grow for me. But for other people, it's just doing the thing and not worrying about what happens. It's just making it happen. Yeah. So that's the joy of the group. I think, you know, the number of people we got there's such a great mix of skills. And, you know, what you're doing, you know, and how quickly we can do things. I mean, you and I did an event where you worked with a filmmaker, Maddie, and we did that in like what you see, the quality of the output and how quickly we did it between a group of 3 or 4 of us about your pictures was amazing. You know, it's one of the most proudest things I've been part of in the lockdown, was that work. And it was so touching. You know, I'm sure it's out there and you can do the link, Dorota. But
yes, I will definitely. But the feedback we received from it was amazing.
Yes.
Even when you look at how many people viewed it, says you know, that it you know, somehow you know, resonated with people. And yeah, it's about doing those projects. You know, it's like, even we used to say that we are not selling something and we need to make a revenue of whatever. We are happy if whatever we do touch one person, and that person feels the spark to, you know, to blossom, to feel better, to look after themselves and remain alive, because there are so many that may struggle with that simple aspect of keep going, you know. So yeah, and this is the joy of, you know, doing work like we are doing, because the joy and the love are the emotions that they multiply. You give a little and you return, you have in return double of it. And this is what we strive for, don't we, in those networks? That's, you know, we are enjoying what we are doing and we are infecting others, because, you know, joy, creativity is contagious, and we are just passing it on.
Definitely. And I think your point about one person, you know, making a difference to one person. I always remember when I was at TFL, I used to do like lunchtime drop-ins to talk to people about, you know, anything that's going on around mental health or support for that. And there was a guy there, and he was wondering, if you can picture that the office is like these rooms, there's meeting rooms with clear screens, so you can see through the meeting rooms. Yeah, they've got like a little shady area, but you can see over the top and see who's in the room. And this guy was wandering outside the room, and I remember him thinking, you know, is he going to come in or not? And he did. He came in the end, and because I was sitting there on my own, no one else had turned up. I was there for an hour. I was sitting there just writing, but if anyone wanted to come in, I was there for them. And he came in to me and he told me the story, and it touches me now, about his sister, who I think, you know, she needed a diagnosis because she was unwell, mentally unwell, and he just didn't know what to do and where to go. So I sat with him for about 15, 20 minutes, and we talked through all the options that are potentially available for signposting. Anyway, 2 weeks later, I got an email from him, because I left my email message, and he said, Steve, my sister's gone. I've taken her to the, you know, where we suggested, and she's now getting support. And, you know, it's changed my life because he was like a carer for her, you know, that was the bottom line of it. And it was, you know, he was struggling to manage work and the caring. And, you know, she got something that stabilized her and he could leave her at home and then come to work. And, it, you know, and that, to me, that's, you know, that typified it. He was floating around that door, you know, he would, and I changed his life. No, I'm not, it's not about boasting, but it changed his life to talk to someone that knew where he could go. But he was a step away from perhaps still struggling to hold a job down and care when he could get support. So, you know, that's the difference. So one meeting with one person, you know, if only 2 people turn up, it doesn't matter because that multiplies, you know. And I remember him saying that, you know, he's got other friends and family and he was going to share what we shared. So it wasn't just about his sister, but wider. So, you know, that these events that we do, it doesn't matter how many are there. It's if there's people there that go away and then take something with it. And, you know, your stuff like your you know, the video we did, I had a couple of friends that said, you know, actually what people were talking about. And one it even inspires people in different ways. One of my friends said, oh, I used to do artwork and I've not done it for years. And I watched the video and now I'm going back to sketching and things like that.
Oh.
So it's not just about mental health, but, you know, inspiring people to do something to, you know, look after themselves and be that way. So, yeah, this isn't about numbers. Like you say, it's not about revenue. It's about the quality of the interaction and the connection and people using that connection to make themselves feel better and more self-esteem or encourage them to do things that perhaps they didn't feel they could do. So I'm really excited about, you know, what we're going to do on Friday. And I think it's going to be interesting to reflect on it afterwards. And they're the sort of things I'm hoping that we're going to do more and more of. I mean, I know Chris O'Sullivan down at Waltham Forest. I've known her for a few years because I got involved when the community started. Amazing woman, so conscientious and supportive. But, you know, wants people like us and wants to encourage us to do things. And that's some of the challenge for her is she doesn't want, she's the encourager, the facilitator and getting us to do things. And that's what I want to be for the group. And our group is to encourage people to do things and stretch themselves a little bit where they can come away feeling as though they've achieved something and made a difference to others. And telling stories are so powerful. You know, the stories that we've heard between us and I've heard over the years touch me, but they make a difference because you get that empathy from others that perhaps don't understand, but listening to those stories, it can change people's perspectives very quickly indeed. And also sometimes it flicks a button that makes them understand that there's people around them that perhaps are going through stuff that they didn't realize. So when these people are getting snappy or angry or withdrawn, it's more than just them being ignorant or horrible. It's something to do with their health. And that's the sort of thing that what we do by the sharing and the storytelling and the lived experience side of things can make such a difference.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited.
Indeed. And, you know, in terms of this being snappy, withdrawn, that we need to remember that myself, Dorota, have an illness. And sometimes that illness take over and speak on my behalf. Although I don't want to say things, I may say it because when I'm in a bad state, I don't have a filter and things just come out. And it's very important to remember that, you know, sometimes illness may be horrible, but we as people, we are not horrible. We don't want to be horrible. No. It's just the illness that sometimes makes us as such. So yes, I also have huge hopes for that event on Friday, and there are some brilliant news that I can't yet say in public, but I will brief you, you know, privately. But I want to reassure you that your agenda, your mission is fulfilled, because you are doing just that. You know, if I haven't met you, I wouldn't be where I am today. If you haven't listened to my crazy ideas and just push me slightly to go for it, I wouldn't achieve outcomes and completion of projects that are to me very huge. Because when I look back, I wouldn't ever think that I will do something like that, come in life even, I kept silent for years, not disclosing what was happening to me. And now I speak about it openly. So, at least from my side, I can say that you achieved a lot and keep achieving, and you are growing those branches at amazing speed and amazing strength. And I wouldn't be here if not you. So I hope that at least reassures you.
It touches my heart to hear that. And I suppose the analogy is I'm the one that puts the water on the plant, and then you're the people that grow. You're the ones that make it happen. But you have to have that little bit of water and the nice soil, the environment in which to do it. And that's what I want the community to do. We give them an environment where they feel comfortable and confident and do things, great things like you're doing, and having the confidence to do these sorts of things that, like you say, a few months or years ago, you wouldn't have ever dreamed of doing. Everyone's capable of it. We've all got it inside us. It's just finding the key that unlocks that potential.
Definitely.
In whichever way it is, and whatever, but making sure people enjoy it, that's the main thing for me.
Yes, of course. This is the point. Oh my God, as usual, when I talk to my guests, I forget that the time is passing, not keeping still, although I could certainly talk for hours. So I quickly need to present you with the surprise I do for every guest on my podcast. So I have engaged in art. So I do what I preach. And, I was thinking about you and your mission and your energy. And I came up with the image, which I will show you in a second. And I do that for every guest. This is my initiative to give back to community, to that wonderful mental health warriors platform that runs through donations. So you have priority to purchase that image, and 20% of it goes to mental health warriors. So I don't think that there will be a lot of surprise when I was thinking about you. This came out too, and I titled it, "We've Got You."
Yeah, lovely. That's so nice. That's brought tears to my eyes. That's so lovely. I'm a big supporter of what you do. You can see, I think that side there, that's one of yours.
It's mine,
Overwhelmed, which is, I always look at it and it reminds me of me and what I was going through. And sometimes I do, I look at it, but it reassures me that it's just human. But that's beautiful, and that connection picture, what I've seen, just a glimpse of it. It's I love your art. That I'm a big supporter, and one of the saddest things for me was we just got that exhibition in Faversham, and then what you did, and I got to see it last day. I think I just managed to get and I'm really pleased I did. And there's plenty more opportunities for those things to happen, and I'll support you all the way, that.
I do.
I've got tears in my eyes on that picture.
Bless you. Thank you so much, Steve, for coming, to my show. I'm sure that we will meet again at some point, because we have so many projects that we can talk about that, 1 hour is not sufficient to explore them all. But I hope that program at least brought to people's attention your beautiful journey, not only full of flowers, but also of those thorns on the roses. But it kept you going, and you achieved a lot. And yes, you are that gardener of the tree that looks after the tree to grow and grow more branches and just blossom in the spring. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Dorota. It's been a real pleasure being here with you, and you're special too. You're doing some amazing things, and keep up the good work, and I'll be alongside you. That.
Thank you so much, and see you everyone for another podcast in 2 weeks, I think, or maybe a week. Well, I will be on the case, and we'll let you know. See you all, and have a lovely rest of your Sunday.